The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon.
I'm not planning to say very much, but let me know if I'll try and make an intelligent comment or support Spencer sometime as we wrap up.
Of course, John, we know that.
Thank you, John. Thanks for being a part of it. Thanks everyone who's loading up into the webinar. It's Jenny B. I'm with CII. We appreciate your time as always. We'll give folks just another minute as we load in. I'd like to thank those of you who made the trek to San Diego to join us at the CII annual conference. It was great to see you all there. And for those of you on the call who were not able to join us, I'd like to throw out one final shout out of gratitude to John Fish for all he does for our industry and advancing technologies. We presented him with the John Porter Award for Technology Advancement. And again, a huge thanks to John Fish. It was our honor to present that award to him. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and allow Fernando to kick off today's webinar. We thank you again for joining us. And again,
great.
Enjoy your day.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Thank you so much. Again, John, congratulations. Yes, today is another exciting addition to our joint working group, Next Gen Joint Working Group set of webinars. So this one's about the power of Takt planning and Takt control, TPTC, in work packaging strategies. So again, our Next Gen project delivery program. This is another exciting add to the toolkit that we hope everybody can take advantage of. So before we move on, a little bit about the joint working group. We have a lot of major organizations that are represented. You know, not only CII but LCI and PPI, the Project Production Institute. You know, along with major owner operators and EPCs, universities, and a lot of the technology groups that are aligned. So, if anybody, as you go through, are interested in joining the joint working group, please reach out to myself or John Strickland. Our email's there below. You'll see a copy of it, and we'd be happy to get you involved and look at other further developments of our next gen toolkits. So, without further ado, because we've got a lot to cover today, I do want to introduce Spencer Easton. He's a tech planning and control expert. Really exciting, very well versed in this in the industry. So, Spencer, why don't you say a few words, and I'll pass the controls over to you too.
Perfect. While we get my screen switched over, I'll share a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for 20 years now. I've, you know, done everything from be a labor, you know, person with a shovel in my hand all day. Went back to school and got my degree in construction management. Then went through, you know, assistant superintendent, project engineer, estimator, draftsman. Went through scheduling for a long stint. And then most recently, I've switched over to a lean role at Mortensen Construction. And super excited to be here today and talk about Takt planning and Takt control. Some of my, and let me know, you should be able to see my screen now. Some of my experience comes from hearing about the word Takt, and the first time I heard about it was actually on the Lean Construction blog, and I started reading about it. This was probably 2016, and you know, started to see that there was a potential way to start doing this for some of the work that I was a part of. Long story short, I ended up testing it on a couple different projects and wanted to learn more. So my adventures took me to Germany and to Sweden and around the world, trying to learn from the top experts, trying to study and understand others' research and what they had been doing and trying and seeing, and landed me with two of the world experts in Takt planning, Dr. Jonas Dooley and Marco Binnener. And my time with them there in Germany was extremely fruitful. And from that, me and a partner started a consulting firm spreading Takt planning to the industry. So today, as we start walking through the power of TAC planning and TAC control and work packaging strategies, I wanted to do kind of a comparison because we see a lot of the same types of concepts in TAC planning and TAC control that you see in advanced work packaging. And this was something that was interesting to me, that me and Fernando and others on LinkedIn have been talking about in this same community, in the same space. So the thing that I wanted to kind of kick it off with was kind of a little bit of a history, and then jump into what the system is and kind of go through it so we can have this great conversation. And again, at the very end, we're going to have some Q&A, and I'm sure there'll be some great questions that'll come up. So I look forward to that as well. So let me click on here. Go to my next slide. So the origins of TAC planning actually predates CPM, which is great. It's awesome on one end and sad on the other, because in my opinion, having utilized both methods, in my opinion, CPM alone is not as powerful as a tool as if we include some of these other strategies that we're all focused on moving forward. There's some subsequent slides that'll show you some of the other history around the same type of time frame, but what we call TAC planning and TAC control, this is kind of the origin story. It comes from the European countries and made its way over, and a lot of people called some of the concepts of what was initially started SIPs, short interval production scheduling, and some others, did some other research, across the U.S. And this last kind of section right here, these are the two gentlemen that I associate myself with, Marco Beniner and Janosch Julie, and they have done tremendous amounts of research and study around the application of Takt to construction, which is what they call TAC planning and TAC control. So I am going to share my slides. So if anybody wants to dig in further research, you kind of see some of the content down here in the bottom. There's tons of different resources to dig into of the history of where it started, where it came from, so on and so forth. So there's a lot more depth here, and I'll share that as part of the slides that you'll be able to actually click in here and see these links and go on from there. So from here, the origin obviously predates CPM, like I talked about, but the principles and the system in which it's founded on comes from lean principles. It comes from lean manufacturing. It has its roots in the Toyota production system. It has its, obviously, takt time. That's one of the major stints. But the concept of one-piece flow and takt time combined with pull is the sweet spot of takt planning. So the principles of takt planning are those three, which happen to be the lean principles. I'll show a subsequent slide of the lean principles, the person that we learned it from, Shishiro Nakao, who was the second in command at Toyota when Taiichi Ono was creating the Toyota production system. So some really great, kind of grassroots translation that we've gotten from Mr. Nakao. The idea of takt planning, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, going left to right, it's taking the traditional standard project structure and trying to create more order and standards for our program, for our project, whatever level you're applying it to. And you see a standard structure. You might have, different activities that are linked. You have other things that are just kind of writing the data date. Like that's typical chaos that we see in a standard production schedule using CPM. And as we get closer and closer to order, whether we're doing last planner system or, some other types of things that tries to organize things, we see some more structure come. And really the idea that we're going for is structure and stability with standardization in the kind of middle right here. That's the typical flow that you'll see with a takt plan. So with a takt planning side. And there's three major flows that are focused on usually when we're talking about takt planning. There's workflow, which is each task in order, or the sequence, right? That's kind of that workflow. You have crew flow, meaning each trade or crew would go from area to area to area, or space to space to space, or zone to zone to zone, with their work over and over again repeatable to a common pace or takt time. And then you would have the logistics flow or path of construction, meaning you would do this area first, you do this area second, and so on and so forth. And that would be the order at which you would do that work. So that's kind of the view and focuses that you see from a takt plan. At a high level, there's some terms to talk about. And this is where the connection starts to happening with work packaging. There's 4 major terms, and usually the idea of takt planning is related to a train. And you can see obviously the sequence in this train, and each car or each box or each set of wheels has an amount of work packages that can happen within that time. So that is referred to as a wagon. So this wagon idea is something that can house multiple work packages, a single work package, or no work packages. Work package obviously is what we're talking about, a definable feature of work that is completed by a crew, right? So if that crew is going to go do that thing over the entire project, that list of, that activity or list of activities or set of work that they will do is what is defined as a work package. Work step is the standard work process for that work package. And buffer is obviously, an allowance or something to deal with, the variation or issues or risks to a project, and understanding how much or little buffer is important. And we can actually see that within our plan. So these are some of those general terms. I have a little bit more in-depth slide that shows you some examples. Like I talked about, the train is kind of that sequence. The engine is what's setting the takt time buffer you can see in there. And if we were to zoom in on a takt plan, we could see that sequence of work. You can see the wagons, you can see the work packages. And if we were to explode one of these work packages, and I go to the next slide, you can actually see, if you were to click on one of them, you could see the integral steps within, whether that's work steps, logistic steps, quality, material, so on and so forth. So the work package really does become that nucleus of information, kind of like what we see in advanced work packaging. So all of this culminates in one overarching production schedule, which could be for project, it could be for phase of work, it could be for a certain portion of a phase of work. So it could be done at any level, and it creates the backbone or structure for our production. Hence why takt planning really is synonymous with production planning. It's trying to understand what pace we need to all hit in order to hit the overall production, and coming up with what are the work areas or zones that we need to be working in, what are the tasks and the sequence thereof, and all of the subsequent things. And when I say all of the subsequent things, I like to think of it in this fishbone diagram, where the production schedule or the takt plan is the backbone, and all the other subsequent things or things that need to come before, like billing, buyout, procurement, design, engineering, logistics, all those things, they do need to happen, and they do need to be aligned with production. So if it's not hitting at the pace or giving all of these bits of information to that individual either wagon or work package, then we're not going to be successful, which is why I think that's the other thing that really aligns work packaging with takt planning and takt control. So I have a couple real life examples that I want to kind of showcase. First, I'm going to start off with a little video. We're gonna see if my audio comes through, and see if we have any issues there. If not, I'll talk through the example of the little quick video, and then I have a bunch of other case studies that I just quickly go through so you can see the examples of what it looks like in some different types of construction projects and industries. So we'll go from there and see if this works. So I'll need some feedback to see if we're hearing the sound and audio from this right here.
I'm not hearing any audio.
Nothing? let me check one thing really quick. I'm unable to share it really quick. Well, I'll just talk through it. Show, share, audience view. I might just hit play and go through this. I'm not seeing a way how to do it. So we'll just go ahead and continue hit play. So this is an example. This is a quick, This is a quick little 2-minute video that we share with folks inside and outside of the company that I currently work for to try to help them understand what takt planning and takt control is. At Mortensen, we call takt planning and takt control flow construction. And so you see the icon here, we break it down into the parts, which is the system is to help us plan, schedule, and execute work. It helps us understand that pace that I talked about originally and what it takes to hit that pace. And so at the high level, early on, before we have trade partners onboarded, we try to figure out how many phases of work there are and how the flow of that work is going to go. Is it one major phase? And how do we have all trades working together? Or is it multiple phases to get to the overall duration that will give us the best flow of work? We also talk about at Mortensen how we build that workflow with trades. So if we have that early on strategic plan, how do we onboard trades to get the best workflow and crew flow? So when we start, we usually break down the scopes of work into zones that we'll be able to build the project in, and then get everyone aligned to a common pace so that everyone is able to flow at the same pace. And there's lots of different ways to pull those knobs, but the best way is to plan at the next level of detail. So this next level of detail is that kind of sub-step level where we're going into, if the work package has a lot of different data and information in it, what work steps do we have? How many people, logistics, material, equipment, information do we need for each work package so that we can understand if the activity is going to go and if it's going to be successful. Hence why we'll need to be focused on removing roadblocks ahead to make sure that all of those things are answered, that we can actually do that work when it comes up. So this is an example of us trying to communicate to our trade partners, to our owners, and to our, internally to teams that haven't used it yet, how we as Mortensen is redefining what is possible, which is the utilization of takt planning and takt control. So here's an example of a tool of where you can see the flow of work, the flow of trades, or the crew flow, and the logistics flow. So you can see the idea behind having a work package that is repeated over and over and over within a certain space, within a certain area. You see how that's kind of shown right here. When we jump into actual real life examples, the earliest that I can find to be able to share here is actually the Empire State Building. So if we think about it, looking at the line of balance, which is this is technically a line of balance chart, when line of balance aligns to a common pace, it is a takt plan. So if everyone's going at the same rate, which is what you see here in the middle example, this is the aligned production schedule for the Empire State Building, to which why they were able to produce so fast is because they aligned production, were able to minimize the gaps between the work. You can see the workspaces or the zones or construction work areas in which they broke down not only the levels, but each floor down into subsequent areas, which this is all hand-drawn, by the way. And then you can see photographs of how that flowed within, I think this is a week or 2 week snapshot between each one of these. The crazy thing is I believe it was 13 months, or someone maybe can correct me on that. I think it was around 13 months that the Empire State Building took. It was completed from nothing to complete space, meaning people can occupy those areas, drywall and everything, within 13 months, which is something we can't touch today. And it's crazy that we went from this mentality and we went a different path. So here's a great example of using the same concepts to achieve an amazing flow of work. The next example that I have is by Hensel Phelps. So this was their Pentagon renovation project. They call it a SIP schedule, but it's the same concepts of breaking down the work zones, understanding the sequence of tasks, getting to a common pace, and then flowing that work from one place to the next in those 3 major flows. So great example here of this project. Now this next one is one that I personally was involved with. And this was an $80 million hospital project, a couple different buildings that were stitched together, different types of work. And this particular team was using the traditional method and decided to switch to a Takt plan to recover a project that was 12 weeks behind. And not only did we recuperate those 12 weeks, but we finished a week ahead of schedule and used the example right here. For those of you that will be able to have this link, there's a little testimonial from this team, great little example that you can click on and learn and see the actual example here and have them walk through. A great thing that they did is they had little cards for every single worker on site that had this Takt plan, and everyone had it in their pocket, and they had a fun time making it a fun ordeal for everybody, kind of testing them. Hey, where should the electricians be next week? And everyone, the first person to come up with the answer got a prize, stuff like that, making it fun. So that's an example. We have another hospital example. This one was actually on a Native American reservation. And again, I have a couple other videos here subsequent down here that you'll be able to look through and watch and see how this team used the Takt plan. They used it in conjunction with the last planner system, which was really great. And understanding their flow of materials was another big thing. So they really had a great time diving into the first example that this company had with the idea of work packages. So not just a task that just needed to happen, but understanding all the underlying data that would need to be housed in that task. So really, really fun, great example on that one. And then I have a screen that will kind of be overwhelming. This was all I wanted to fit on a screen. I've successfully helped over 300 projects implement Takt planning, and from a lot of different industries, from a lot of different types of construction work, everything manufacturing, done a little bit of oil and gas, done some energy and infrastructure jobs, done sports and entertainment jobs, done office building jobs, done assisted living jobs, done a little bit of everything. So you can see here that it might not look exactly the same, but you see the concepts that I've been kind of referring to and talking about how it's applied in different examples across different industries. So now that we kind of have a base understanding of the idea behind Takt planning and Takt control, I wanted to dive into the kind of center structure for what Takt planning is, which is the connection point between work packaging and Takt planning, which is the work package. So work package is kind of like the nucleus for Takt planning. It's the scalable, repeatable thing that will happen from area to area to area or zone to zone to zone. And that's the idea. We're trying to find the similarities. What is the same that we can flow from space to space to space? And how do we standardize as much as possible? A lot of times we only see the differences. We only see, the things that stand out to us, which are the differences. And sometimes we take for granted the things that are standard. And a lot of times the standards can get us, a majority of the way there, or if not, take a big chunk of the workload off of us, which is why understanding the implementation of work packages within construction, really, I see it both from the advanced work packaging side and the Takt planning and Takt control side, helping us to get to a more streamlined, optimized flow of work and understanding how to execute better, with those standards being the central being the work package. You can see there's a bunch of different kind of like ways to think about this. So have 4 different kind of categories here. whether it's the content of the work package. And this is where you kind of see the combination of engineer work packages. You see design steps. That's kind of the same type of concept. So the work package itself isn't necessarily each individual type of work package like we see in advanced work packaging. It's an overarching work package that houses all of those individual work packages or information and content that would need to be created, curated, or coordinated for the work package. You see status of work package so that you can understand where are we at. Is it ready to be done? That's kind of the backlog idea. Are all constraints removed? Is it started? We can kind of start to understand our percent plan complete with understanding how many work packages we should have happen within a takt time. So lots of great connections there. And then the documentation of the work package. This is where a lot of that procurement and front half and status half of a work package really can come in handy. That's that bill of materials or understanding when we are to start this work, this specific work within this specific area for this specific time. This is the material that is kitted for that work, for that specific understanding. So a lot of that great connection point between what we see in advanced work packaging and beyond into takt planning and takt control. So this is the nucleus for takt planning and takt control, which is the work package. Diving deeper, if we were to do a comparison with the basics of advanced work packaging and takt planning and takt control and try to correlate the two, I have a couple slides here that I'll walk through. I found this this helpful when I went through my training for advanced work packaging. This was the top chart was the first really good example of what the system of advanced work packaging was at a very basic level, right? There's a lot more to it, but this at the core is kind of the progress of what happens, right? We have the construction work areas, the engineer work packages, construction work packages, all the way to integrated work packages, right? So that's kind of the overall flow and how those kind of truncate within each other. If we were to do the same kind of comparison, a takt project has multiple takt zones. You could call them even construction work areas. It's basically the same thing as how would we break up these zones? You could think about it as what are the differences? You could also say within that within that type, let's say restrooms, you could flow restrooms the same on each floor. If it's in different spaces, whatever, you could break those into sub zones or sub areas. That's kind of that next level. So sometimes we get maybe even more granular on work areas. It depends on who's applying it. I've seen some good examples on both sides. So, but that's kind of that same idea. When we get into engineer work packages, this is where we have an overall work packages that would have engineered or design steps, which would be the engineer work packages in advanced work packaging. And then we'd have work steps or what we would have in construction work packages. And that's kind of the similarities between the two. Is one's called steps, which is a subset of a work package, but it's the same type of content that we would get in those two that we would have in what we would call a work package within takt planning and takt control. And then there's different levels, which I'll show on the next slide, of takt planning. And at the very bottom level, that kind of tree level that you saw in that video, the takt planning at the micro level is what some people call it. That's really what is happening when we take a work step and we figure out, okay, when are we going to do it? How much of it is going to happen, within a takt time? If it's a 3-day takt time, how many lineal feet of that is that going to happen on that time? So all of those things, that really integral, small bite is what we do at that step level. So takt planning is really kind of what is synonymous at that level with work phase planning. So digging into those kind of levels and talking about that work phase planning, I wanted to do this comparison, and I have a couple things that I wanted to compare with advanced work packaging and takt planning and takt control, which with work phase planning, takt planning and takt control is those 3 different levels. And from the video, you remember the mountain, the forest, and the trees. So this is kind of that mountain view, that overall view that before trade partners are on board, before buyout has happened, before we have contractors with us. And then really to get down into the work packaging details, we need whoever is going to be in charge of those work packages with us to be able to finalize the production schedule. And then from there, we dive into an ongoing planning process of getting down into the micro level detail that you see down here. And you see kind of the same type of visuals down here. You see this kind of macro view, and the Germans call this the norm view, or this kind of middle view, that work package view. And then down into the micro level or the steps level, where we're getting down into that IWP type level planning, if that makes sense. We also have another example of some good cross kind of processes from path of construction and construction work areas. So that's kind of how it's talked about in advanced work packaging. Obviously, we have similar type things with what we call logistical flow. That is the path of construction. So you're moving from this space across here, up this direction, or you're doing this and then that, right, type idea. And those things that you're doing, or those places in which you're doing the work, are the construction work areas, i.e. the Takt zones. And people call those different things. They call them areas, they call them zones. But the idea is still the same. So when I learned this from the AWP side, I was super excited to see that we're all kind of going down the same path of defining the space and scope of work down to that really, really great level. I have it's kind of a GIF video here. It's not playing, but here's an example of a Takt. Oh, there you go. So you see down here in this bottom right corner, as you click onto the different work packages, you're seeing the integrated BIM model into this system, which is called Takting. And you can click on each individual work package and it's showing you the parts and pieces that you have connected in your actual model. So as you click through it, you can see not only the construction work area that you're working in, but the actual IWP that is connected to those individual work packages. So a really great system to help you visualize some of those same things that we talk about between both systems. And these are some other examples. This was actually a huge religious temple, very, very ornate, very non-cookie cutter. And yet we started to implement these same types of principles because within pockets, within phases, within subphases, we could see the same thing that needed to happen generally from space to space to space. So understanding what those spaces were and how those changed across the life cycle of the project was integral in making this project successful. And then you can also see how it would work with like a roofing sequence. Here is a specific task where we broke up, okay, let's take 5 tasks or 5 work packages, and let's flow those 5 work packages that are up on the roof. Everything from, the actual roofing membrane to, lightning protection, like everything under the sun, all the things that really needed to happen majorly on that roof. We went through and figured out how that flow of work would happen and the path of construction in those different construction work areas. So hopefully you can see that kind of comparison and how they kind of support and contrast each other between the two systems. We also have, we hear a lot of, the upfront procurement work package, bill of materials, like all of those types of ideas in advanced work packaging. Here's another example from that same system, Takting, where we have all of the different bill of materials that are coordinated, that have that are over the next 3 takt times, and you can see them broken out by takt time and what should be showing up. Here's that same exact example, and I went through and I filtered so you can see how many bill of materials are coordinated and planned, and you can see them up here. This is the number of them, and then you can click into the material step and say, okay, if I want to see those materials, what elements are those linked to? Like, so it's going down to that really next level data collection, data automation for us out on construction projects. So another great way to make that connection point between what we're doing with material procurement and what we're doing with execution, and how that kind of works similarly between takt planning and takt control and advanced work packaging. We also have backlog, which I talked about. And this one's a really, really awesome visual one on the takt planning front. When I learned advanced work packaging, it was a typical kind of, constraint management, understanding, the general types of constraints and going through and checking off, what of the upcoming IWPs have no constraints left because we've checked and said, nope, there are no constraints for this activity, and coming up with a quantity of workable backlog that we have from now going forward. So that's that kind of make ready planning for those last planner folks out there. And the thing that I started really recognizing is it's the same concepts. We're looking at what now is, and over the next little bit, what things are actually ready to start, that we could say start right now, and they could. And so that's that kind of backlog preparation that you can see here. And down here below, I show you two examples, same exact project. So there's a way in which you can actually show what the workable backlog is, not only in the histogram up here and visually with these little bubbles that they have over the Takt plan, but you can filter for it and say, okay, show me my workable backlog. And now you can see up front where some of the holes kind of are over the next couple of weeks and where I need to be focusing my planning and my effort. So it visually shows you that over a time scale, which can be very, very helpful. And it also helps you hone in on where some of your constraints might be. I didn't do a visual because there's a lot on this page, but you can actually filter out and show you where those constraints still lie. So that's where you need to focus your time on removing those constraints, removing those roadblocks, so it can become part of the workable backlog for the foreseeable future. And so we have a good, healthy amount of work in front of us that is coordinated that we can go through and achieve. So another great connection there. And we have another example. So this is trying to show that work package idea of the work package level within a Takt plan. So right here, not sure if you can see my cursor, but there is a singular work package that is selected, and that brings up the work package level data. And so you see here stuff like the name and status of the work package, the amount of different kind of work package clusters that are within that work package, like logistics, design, work, quality, handover, work package information, material. That's that kind of procurement work package idea. All of these, right? And that's that step level. And then you also have production and more data information like QR codes, images, a log of information, so on and so forth, cost and all of that. And then if you were to click on one of those work package entities, like the steps or the work process, if you were to click on that, that takes you to one step further, which is the work steps level. And it's showing you all of the standard work steps. And I don't have it in here, but you can actually show production rates by each work step, and then have a micro view of when that should happen within the Takt time. And if you were to even select that even further, it takes you one step even further down the next level of data integration, which is the BIM model elements for each one of those steps, production by each one of those, and status by each. So you can see how much status you have by each individual work package. So you're tracking that across every single work package for the entire production schedule. So this is kind of showing, advanced work packaging is kind of the next level of data integration of all these different entities into one kind of common language, the work package. It's the same type of entity here where you see that next level of data, not only collection, but utilization of planning, preparation, production, and adherence to our plan and mitigation of any risks. So one final thing I wanted to talk about with regards to Takt planning was when we're talking about Takt planning, really when in my brain, when I hear Takt plan, I hear work package visual. So here's a more zoomed in visual of that same system, but this is that kind of idea that I started with of you can see the wagons or Takt time by area. So the pace that we need to hit for each area within the process. And you can see each individual work package and the status thereof. So it's a really great visualization of those work packages in a production schedule or production plan type visual. And so even though you might not know the names of these or what type of work it is, you basically get the gist by looking at it. The sequence of work, the flow of the trades, and the order in which it will go, if you could see the areas, which I didn't include here on the side, but you can basically pick up the gist very, very quick. I've had a lot of both trade partners, internal team members, owners, and stakeholders that we show this originally to, And for the first like 5 seconds, they're like, oh my gosh, this looks like a lot. And once you spend about 60 seconds to help describe what the chart actually means, everybody that I've ever come into communication with understands it really, really quickly. So the visualization of the TAC plan usually is the first thing that hooks people into liking the system, is because it's a much more visual way of communicating than a typical Gantt or CPM type schedule, which is pages and hundreds, thousands, however many pages per, the size of project, versus perhaps a 1 or even 2 page production plan that you can visually see and see how things and when they kick off and how they're supposed to flow and the pace thereof and what areas and how the breakdown that works. So the information is still there, and actually even more so, but it's truncated within the nucleus of the TAC planning and TAC control system, which is the work package, which is what I'm so excited about talking to this group. That is why we're here talking about these great connection between some of these tools and systems that some of us have used or come up with in order to help improve the construction industry. So I'm going to pivot off of the kind of ideas behind Takt and the connections between advanced work packaging and TAC planning, and pivot to next steps. Obviously, there's probably a number of folks out there that are on the call that are looking for, okay, this is great. I see a lot of things that I might want to use or at least take this part of. How do we do that? Or maybe full-fledged test the system out for your projects. I suggest 3 major things for anyone that is wanting to and willing to try TAC planning and TAC control. And here are the 3 things that I would suggest, and I'll dive into each one individually. So learn the principles in the system, 1 step at a time, and Kaizen. Let's go 1 at a time. So learn the principles and systems. There's lots of places that you can learn about TAC planning and TAC control. There's 3 main ones that I would recommend personally. One, I'm biased because it's my platform that I share a great system of how to understand the basics and concepts of how to start using it on your construction project, how to use it. It comes with templates and great examples, and I dive into some more depth onto the principles. And that's that Takt U or Takt University that you see right there in the middle. There's a link to that online course. It's a 3-hour course, really, really streamlined, has lots of great content and side stuff, comes with a lot of great stuff. So that's a really good source. The Lean Construction blog is where I made my start. I've also written a couple of blog posts now on the Lean Construction blog, a great place to learn about TAC planning and TAC control. And the third one would be the TAC simulation. For anyone that has the opportunity to join one of these, and I'll be posting about some times that I'll be hosting it. There's also other times where other folks host this simulation. It's a great example of learning how the system works with when we build, how we plan, how we execute work. And you see some examples up here of some of the concepts that we kind of go through. It's a really great training tool. It takes about 5 hours. Later this year, I'm going to be doing 2 simulations with 60 people. So this same simulation you see here, I'm doing 4 of them all at the same time with 60 individuals. We're doing 2 back-to-back days with the AGC of California, and going to be a really, really great time for anyone that has availability to join that. This is done all over the world. It's done in Germany, France, Sweden. It's done in South America. It's done in Japan. It's done in Middle East. Anywhere that a construction project is, this is being done. I think it is the #1 Takt simulation in the world that I'm aware of. So really, really great. Reach out if you want to join in that. So that would be #1, is learn the principles and the system. 2 would be 1 step at a time. Don't try to implement the whole thing. Don't try to do, it's just like advanced work packaging. If when you go to implement, you need to be bought in, but it needs to be 1 step at a time, learning those individual concepts 1 at a time, because doing a whole new thing is hard in and of itself. And then if you were to use a tool or a system, that would be harder in and of itself. So understand chunks, understand one piece flow, understand one thing at a time, because it's not easy just to jump into a whole new system. So take it one step at a time, do one step at a time, because that's how we get things done. We're kind of, living by our own book on that one, if that makes sense. And the last one is, we're all on a journey, and Takt planning and Takt control is a try. It is us in the industry trying to improve our system and our way of planning, scheduling, and executing work, our way of production planning and production control. And so while this is showing great benefit, it shouldn't be the end for any of us. And we shouldn't want to just replace CPM with a new tool. What we should do is look at the opportunities that we have in front of us and say, okay, this is where we're at. How can we continuously improve? I have a picture of Mr. Nakao, who actually came to Mortensen the other day. This is the gentleman that was the second in command to Taiichi Ono at Toyota. And he talks about how all things need to be thought of in systems thinking. And you see him on the little drawing that he drew up there. He draws the mountain, the forest, and the trees, which is why we try to adopt that into our thinking of everything's a system, and everything has different levels, and everything connects to each other. And those understanding that will help us on our continuous improvement journey, so that we're not just stuck in, how we've always done things. And we're not just saying this is now the new religion that we're going to go off. This is the new tool, the new religion. But we're all on a journey towards a better future for our industry, for construction. So obviously, look to improve the process, look to improve any system, whether it's some sort of combination between advanced work packaging and Takt planning and Takt control, or something else, the PPI principles, or anything under the sun. We should be always thinking of, how do we take these concepts and create something that is better for the next generation coming up, so that they inherit a better construction industry than we got. So with that is all I had planned for this section, and we'll move on to the Q&A portion of the webinar.
All right. Thank you, Spencer. Wow, that was fantastic. And I'm a big believer in what you finished with was systems thinking, and how Takt planning just contributes to that whole process. So for all those that are listening in your panel, there is a question component of that. So if you want to enter some questions, go ahead. We have a few already, I see. And let's go ahead and start with a few of these. Let me, I can go ahead and go back here. So hopefully you can see my screen. So that's Spencer's contact information, by the way. So please, if you want to reach out to Spencer, please do so. So here's a couple of questions. One, and it has to do with some software and some tracking. So first, are those control tracking charts Excel based? And in addition to that, the second question would be, what software are you using to control the work packages? Or can you give some example softwares for this type of management?
Yeah, great question. So usually when I'm starting with people and teams that are just starting out using Takt planning, it's such a different system than what we're used to in construction. And usually teams start in Excel. Most of the examples that I showed today are from a system called Takting, which does an extremely better job of managing the work packages. So the control of the work package data, Takting, in my opinion, is the furthest along and the best connected to the work packaging ideas. And so that would be my suggestion between those two, between Excel and between Takting, and it's just takting.com. That's where you would find that tool. They're on LinkedIn. They have a ton of videos, really great resources. That company actually was started by Marco Binner and Janosch Dooley. So that's how I found out about it. Is that's where I learned the process. That's where some of the best examples are done through that platform. But it can be done on paper. It could be done 1,000 different ways. I'll actually show. I don't know if you can see me where I'm at. I've been working with a team here. I wasn't planning on doing this, but this is actually like a paper version of the same exact thing. we're trying to come up with what our work packages will have and then come up with the flow. So, I mean, it could be done in whatever tool, but those seem to be the best tools for the job, is both Excel and Takting.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so another one. What does the team look like that does this type of planning?
Any normal construction thing. Usually, so I'll go even further. Usually, there is more planning done upfront than a traditional type project. So you probably will have some sort of field ops manager, director earlier on, or a superintendent that would be assigned to the project earlier, at least to some sort of amount of planning. Usually planning with Takt planning takes less time because it is a structured way to do the production planning. I prided myself on, when I was a scheduler, that I was really, really good and really, really fast at doing planning for projects. And I am exponentially faster at doing it in Takt planning because of the standardization of the sequence, the wagons, the work packages, all of the stuff. So it becomes much easier to do planning. So on one hand, it's easier and faster to do it within Takt planning, but two, it needs to be done earlier. It should be done with folks that understand the production aspect of the field as soon as possible. So the ideas around IPD and all these other things that are getting things sooner and earlier, it's the same type of idea. So I hope that answers the question generally, based on what the question was.
Yeah, I think that absolutely did. And like advanced work packaging, workplace planning, if you're getting started, I think it's best to reach out to some experts to help you get started the right way. I think that's kind of key, because you don't want to have a false start or throw it out the window because you're not recognizing where you can apply this within an industrial space, within a technology space, with all these things. So yeah, know that, and I firmly believe this. I'm on several projects right now where there are repeat things. They're just not obvious.
Yes.
To us. So okay, let's go down to a few other questions. Are there standards, and where can they be obtained? I think that you were kind of hinting at that by the learning process.
Yes, there are a couple different entities that are trying to standardize the Takt planning and Takt control processes. We have, I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with P2SL, the laboratory out of UC Berkeley. Iris Tomlin is kind of leading that now. And she has started an international Takt forum for Takt planning. And that seems to be the most well established and agreed upon place where all of that is kind of like summating and culminating. There's some other places, there's some other entities that are trying to standardize and based on certain types of work that they've done. I think some of those can be a little short-sighted because they haven't applied them in more than maybe one sector of construction. So I think that's maybe something that is almost there, but not quite like this is the place. A great question. I think that what the Germans have done is the best, and I would refer you to their published work. But again, it is a little scattered at the moment, but becoming more and more firm every day. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I think this kind of goes a little bit with some earlier discussions. So this can dovetail into an FEL planning. Have you tried to integrate into front-end loading FEL, and any issues you found?
Not particularly with front load planning, no. But I could see how that concept really could serve itself, and it would be interesting to see the potential. I don't know if it's issues, but the potential combination of those two of how it might help one or the other, or if there's any friction points, that would be an interesting thing to test out and try. So great comment by whoever made that.
Yeah, George, I think it's George or maybe Jorge Budzinski. So thank you. Yeah, got a lot of great questions. Another one, what do you see as the biggest hurdle to implementing Takt in a new organization, and what do you do to overcome it?
So each organization, each team, each person is a little different. So it's hard to come up with one. But this is a really great question. Sometimes it's accountability, and not accountability in the sense of someone not doing something and you cracking the whip on them. It's accountability of the vulnerability between team members to like have open, honest conversations. Sometimes that's the biggest hurdle is the people element, and us not having open and honest conversations of why we don't want to try something or why we're resistant to try something. So and maybe vulnerability is a little bit better word than accountability, but that vulnerability really does play a big factor. Another one that I see is change itself. Especially those of us that are on this call, like we are change agents. We're looking for how do we improve the industry? How do we improve our processes? A lot of people get angst and anxiety just from change itself. And it can be very emotional, like change, right? Because some people find, their why to life in their work and how they do their work. And so it can be very emotional. And so change itself can be another big one. And the last one that I'll kind of hit on is culture. I've worked with companies where the culture is just awesome and there seems to be zero resistance. And it seems to roll out much easier. And I've worked for other companies where the culture is not stellar. And there seems to be a correlation between companies that are willing to do the right thing, have a we before me attitude, and inspire what's possible. Like those companies seem to tend to try, test, adopt, and do things at a more successful, increased rate than companies that don't have that positive company culture in them. So while that might not be helpful because you might not be able to adjust the macro culture of your company, it's something to think about when thinking who we want to align ourselves with, who we want to invest in. From an owner side, if you're on the owner side, think about the company culture of is a team agile? Are they willing to try things? Are they willing to, my company calls it try-storming. Instead of brainstorming, sitting in a conference room and thinking about a thing until we're, blue in the face, why don't we go out there and we try it and see why or why not we should be doing it? Because then that will teach us more than us thinking about it in a conference room. So that type of culture is going to be key. So hopefully that answers that final question.
It's a new word. I'm going to have to use that now.
Try-storming.
Yeah. So I'm going to we're down to the end here. There's one question or two questions I'm going to combine into one here.
Okay.
So is Takt planning and control applicable to civil construction projects? If so, what key factors should be considered? And with that, not only the construction industry, but could this work in discrete manufacturing environments? I think that's a mouthful there. Yeah.
A lot of questions there.
So first, can it work in civil construction projects?
Yes. So I've done it on a number of different civil projects and also civil phases of work of projects. The hardest thing to do is not let the cut and fill dictate anything, because it can be the heat map of what you need to level on a site can be very difficult if that's how if that's where you're going to hang your hat. So I wouldn't start there. I would start with all the other civil work. usually is very simple to go through. Think about utilities. Think about, any type
Roadways,
of improvements,
pipelines,
roads,
yeah,
or anything
yeah.
else like that. That comes very,
Yeah.
very simple. Start there and then see how does the cut and fill feed into those the other types of work for civil. And then the second one, what was the second part of the question?
Yeah, the second part was, can this work in discrete manufacturing environments?
Absolutely. I mean, this comes from lean manufacturing. So it should be able to, both on the manufacturing side and for the, advanced manufacturing construction side. I mean, think about it. If we're building out a manufacturing facility that is supposedly going to be manufacturing things to a takt time and to one-piece flow in the ideal state, we sure as heck can build it that way. And two, for manufacturing itself, that's where these principles come from. So absolutely.
All right. I know that we're at the top of the hour, out of time. So thank you. I think there was a few extra questions here that we didn't get to, but maybe we'll forward them on and get some responses back. So with that, Jenny, anything else we need to add or to close this out? Or
No, I think we're great. Thank you both. We appreciate it very much.
all right.
Until
Thank you.
next
Thank you,
time.
Spencer.
Thanks, Fernando. Thanks, everybody.
Yes.
Thank
all right.
you all. Take
All
care.
right. Take care.
See you
Bye.
soon.